Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm going to be talking about Shadows of Self, Book 2 in the Era to Mistborn series, and just kind of going through and talking about everything with this one. So like the Alloy of Law video, this is going to be somewhat of a spoiler discussion / review, so I will be doing some kind of review things, but also just kind of talking about different aspects of this book and things I like as well from there. So it will be spoiler kind of throughout, including for everything from minor to major. So if you've not read the book, I don't recommend watching this video, but let's talk through and go from there. So I commented with Alloy of Law that I did enjoy it more in reread than I remembered enjoying it the first time, and that remained true for Shadows of Self. Now I think part of it is I read them at release, and so I wasn't crazy on Alloy of Law, so when this came out, I'm like, I'm not going to reread. So then I read this, probably having not remembered everything perfectly from the first one, and rinse repeat with the third book, which is why I'm doing the reread now, and I've been doing that via audio, which I've not been a huge fan of the audio, but I got used to it during book 1, so I didn't have many issues here, but going from there. And so this one, the big things I remembered from here is kind of the overall themes, which start being mentioned in the first book. It's explored more here, and then I remember it's more in Bands of Mourning as well, about how basically how society has progressed or not progressed by the fact that they were given this kind of, perfect utopia city to live in, where they didn't really have to worry about anything because it was kind of provided for them, and so they didn't have the impetus to go on as much scientific discovery. So that was something I thought was interesting, kind of one of the more bigger picture things of what happened when, after the events of Era 1, the world was reshaped. So I remembered that kind of that stuff, and we get a lot more of that here, which I enjoyed. And then, of course, I knew there was the plot with the Mad Khandra. I didn't remember a lot of details of it as well, and rereading it, I'm like, oh yeah, there was a lot more going on. It was a much bigger deal than what I remembered it. So I found myself enjoying this one more as well. And this takes place around a year after Alloy of Law, and so we get a little bit more Steris in this one because of the fact that her and Wax are betrothed, and going from there, and we get, I'm pretty sure, more of her in book 3 as well, but we kind of continue on the main plot, but whereas the first one was dealing more with the, you had the train heist and the robbery, and it was the introduction of the set and all that kind of thing. This book, like, those people are still around, but we're kind of focusing on different things. More so, it's the feelings of the city and the workers who are unhappy with the state of things, still the class imbalance, despite the fact that, the idea was that wasn't going to exist in the New World after, the events of Era 1, and the Mad Khandra, who is going around and trying to cause more unrest than just destabilize things in general. So that kind of exploration is interesting, but it's really the bigger, like, effects and also the little tidbits of what's going on with that specific Khandra that I think are the most interesting thing here. And it makes a ton more sense too with some events later and some events just elsewhere in the Cosmere. But the Khandra in general are one of the more interesting, I think, creations for the world of Mistborn and Scadrial, and what they were created and what they are, and they specifically had, a covenant with the Lord Ruler in Era 1, and they serve, and they, of course, had other purposes as well that they did, but how does that really work in the world later, where, technically they serve Harmony now, but Harmony is not really putting them to use or doing a whole lot in comparison to what the Lord Ruler did, and so it's kind of a really different feel with them. And so seeing that there are some Khandra who basically aren't happy with the situation and prefer to go back, and others who just kind of lost themselves because they didn't really know how to just live as their own beings, essentially. And the Khandra in question here is given a different spike, and so we get a little bit more of the Hemorrhagy, which is not used as much in this as it was in Era 1. It was very, very important to a lot of things, but it is still relevant. I mean, Wax, who can talk to Harmony when he has the earring in, which, goes back to things we learned in Era 1, but has this different spike, and we don't know fully what's going on, and it's kind of explained that because of the different type of spike, Harmony's not able to control this Khandra and those parts. But then when we actually see the type of spike and find out that it is not a metal of this world, which is really relevant, and I feel like was not a detail I remembered until I was rereading this, because it's just been a long time, and like I said, I didn't do any rereading, but specifically showing that Era 2 is going to deal with some sort of outside influence, because we can see that here, and we have the mentions of Trell, which I don't remember a ton about that either, and we don't get a lot of answers. I'm thinking, I wonder if more of that's in book 3, but I haven't reread book 3 quite yet. So some entity, Trell, is interfering with Scadrial, essentially, and so that sets up a pretty big deal. Like I said, I think we're gonna discover more, or like explore more of that in book 3, but I know from some bits and pieces I remember, I think book 4 probably will have more too, but I don't fully remember everything in book 3. That one I have the clearest picture of, because it's the one I read for the first time the most recently in comparison. It's been a while even for that, though, because there's been a pretty big gap between these books and the fourth one that's going to be coming out soon. But so yeah, I really like the exploration of how society is impacted and how society is different based on the setup of Harmony having created this kind of paradise and made the city like this after the events of Era 1. That was kind of the first thing I mentioned, and it's the look here of, just food just grows, it's supposed to be peaceful, there aren't problems, and so without the struggle, without the, issues that they're trying to work through, well, that's kind of the mother of creation. That's where you get, we need to find a better way for this, find more to go here. And so we even get kind of a direct comment in this book from Harmony saying, like, you should have had this technology a long time ago. It also makes it interesting because you look at this and you can kind of think about the time period it's in and what they have and don't have, because we have guns, we have this one features automobiles much more as well, so we have that level of technology, we have electricity, we have things like that, and it felt a little less technologically advanced than book 1, and I feel like book 2 shows that, like, no, there is definitely some of this technology, but it's just other stuff is missing, and it's because it makes it a little harder to check the time period, basically, because it's like, okay, really, where are they technologically? Like, what time period, if you're trying to compare, because they're missing things. Like the radio is a specific example, something that people should have discovered a long time ago in a normal society, but it just wasn't really deemed necessary. And it's always interesting with that too, and exploring how the magic system also changes things, because there's so much that is different when you have magic as well, and these books explore that a bit more as well. So one of the things in the broadsheets articles, which I commented with the last, I think it was this book, right, in one of my wrap-ups, I appreciated those more this time because it was a clever way to do world building. And like, I remember there's one part in this book where it's like somebody writes in an editorial like complaining about how Allomancers were causing damage to property because they're running around pushing off things and shooting guns to push off of and crushing cars and all that, and you get this different picture, instead of Era 1 where it's the Allomancers are just like these really powerful, like almost mythical, really, really crazy, like revered people. Instead now it's like half the time they're just looked at as a menace. And so it's always interesting seeing the way that all kind of goes together. And it's something I found to be really, really fascinating to explore here. I think, too, the technology parts, I think we'll probably look more later, but it does make me wonder as well, because this one was not part of the original planned trilogies, but the next one was supposed to be around the equivalent of like 1980s our time, and then the other one was going to be Space Age and be a space opera. And so it just makes me wonder how different those are going to look as well, just based on what's set up here, and also just how technology can work differently with magic systems. That's something you get a lot in Stormlight, where their magic system and the way that they've created a lot of stuff is different, and there's definitely some elements of that here, although probably not to the same degree, but you get some elements of that here, and so it's been interesting to see, and I'll be interested to continue on with Bands of Mourning, when I get it, because I should have borrowed them all. I got through the first two really quickly, and then Bands of Mourning was available, but then all of a sudden a bunch of people requested it from my library, so I don't have it yet. So, I mean, worst case, I'll just read it physically, because I have it physically, along with the others, but I was planning on doing them all audio, so I have to see, but I will be getting to that when I can, hopefully, before The Lost Metal comes out, because the plan is to read The Lost Metal pretty much as soon as I get it. But we'll have to see. But yeah, once again, I enjoyed Shadows of Self more than I remembered enjoying it, and Bands of Mourning I actually remember enjoying, so I'm hoping that after having these both much fresher in my mind, I will enjoy that even more. So I'm pretty excited to get to that one, and I'm more excited now for the Lost Metal than I was. So I'm really glad that I decided to do this reread. There's usually just a lot of elements, and the reread helps to kind of keep everything in mind, because both Book 1 and Book 2 had larger scale elements that I'd kind of forgotten about, and I just remembered the base stories. And, you know, when you're reading Cosmere books, usually those large scale effects are going to be pretty important, so I'm excited to continue and see where it ends up. That is it for this one, though. So those are my thoughts on Shadows of Self. Let me know your thoughts if you've read this, or like if you recently read it for a reread too. I know a lot of people were. Always interested to hear those thoughts. Make sure to give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Check the link in the description, as always, for the Wizardly Do It Discord if you want to chat books, whether this book, other books, any books, really anything at all. It is a lot of fun, and we would love to have you. And of course, if you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe.